Hey guys, Pt.3. Alright, let's continue on with the butchering the deer. This has been hanging up out here now on the back porch for 2 nights. It's going to get warm enough today to where I don't want to leave it hang anymore. I don't want it to rot. I just wanted it to age and finish draining out a little bit. So what we're going to do now is we have we got the big rib cage part of it. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this belly meat off of the rib cage part here. Just going to take my boning knife and follow it right straight down the rib cage. Just like that, and get that belly meat right off of there. And I don't have any super secret hillbilly tricks for getting the hair off of the meat. There's a lot of hair, and there's going to be a lot of hair, and that happens. What I always do is I just cut the pieces of meat, and then I just soak them and rinse them off underneath the sink. If it wasn't the winter time, I could have my hose that we could rinse it off with, but the hose is frozen, so we had to do it the old-fashioned way. So you just take your meat and try to get these big chunks of fat off of it. I got me a couple of buckets set up here. This meat right here, I'm going to use it just for ground meat, just for burger grind. So all the grind meat, we're just going to throw it in a separate little bowl there. Now on the inside up here, on the inside of the rib cage, along the spine, towards the back, there's a couple of pieces of meat on the inside that I call the tenderloin. It's a really good cut of meat. This side here is really bruised up. Probably not going to be usable. It's full of blood and it's full of just nastiness, so this will be ground into animal feed. Now the tenderloin, this one here looks pretty mangled up. Let's see if there's anything usable on it. You start your cut, you just go right down the center along the inside of the spine, running through here like this, and up here towards the end it kind of rounds itself off. You can just follow your knife right around the edge there, try to get out of the way here where you can see, and on up to the end of the tenderloin, and just pull it right off of the spinal cord there. And this one looks like it's going to be pretty well beat up and not too usable. It's just from the impact of the truck, because this was a roadkill deer, it's got this one really mangled up. We'll set it aside and try to trim it, but it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot on there that's usable. So I'm just going to set that aside for now. The other one looks like it's in good shape. Trim some of this fat off here. So again, I'm going to take and I'm going to follow the inside of the spinal cord. Just follow it right down with your knife, making a cut all the way to the bottom, all the way to the back where it rounds off. And do the same thing, follow the rib cage right up against the cut that you just made on the spinal cord. Just like that. Now you can start lifting that tenderloin out of there. Following it around like that there, and you have your tenderloin. This one's got a little bit of blood on it, but this one is a good piece. So trim the fat off of it, throw the fat in the animal bucket, and there's a good tenderloin right there that we're going to set aside in the good pile. Now this outer meat that's around the outside here, I always just use it for grind. I just use it for grinding up into burger. And the way that I do that is I'll just take and start on one end, start cutting it off and trimming it up. If there's anything that's unusable on there, trim it out. This one looks like a good little chunk. And you just follow the inside of the rib cage. Once you get it up, it's just kind of like filleting a fish. Once you get your cut started, then just follow it all the way around and take this meat right off of the rib cage. Like I say, keep in mind, I'm not a professional butcher. I'm not an expert. I am just a dude doing what I do. So there's another chunk that we will throw into the grind. I do not like to waste anything, so I will meticulously go over and get as much of this meat off of here as I can. because ground deer meat is still deer meat, and it's all good and good for you. So there we go. We'll do that. We're going to do that over the whole rib cage, and then inside, in between each rib, there's a chunk of meat inside each rib, and that's really easy to get to. You just take your knife and run it inside around the rib bones, just like that, all the way up to the top. Run it around and back down to the rib. And that'll give you the piece of meat that was in between the ribs, which we will also use for a grind. A lot of this meat on the rib cage portion is going to be grind. The back straps, which are what a lot of people are really after, which is you know, excellent piece of good. It's like the pork tenderloin, or the pork loin that they make chops out of. That runs right along the outside of the back of the spinal column. You do the same thing. You just run your knife right along the spine all the way down until you hit bone, and it runs all the way up to the front, and you can just take it off like that. This is how I do it. Once you get one of the end of it exposed, then you just follow it all the way around and take out your big section here, which is what I'm in the process of doing now. Follow your ribs all the way up around the top on the inside, and let your knife follow your ribs all the way down till you hit the spinal cord. Put your knife in, follow your ribs all the way around, push it all the way down until it hits the spinal cord, and then just follow that cut all the way to the end again. And then you can start pulling out this back strap. I try to get it in as one big chunk as well as I can, and it's not real pretty, but there it is. There's your back strap that comes right out of the right off the backbone. This is great to be cut into steaks. What I usually do is we'll cut it in half like that, and then cut it into small steaks like that, which I guess is the filet mignon of the deer. Just little chunks like that. That's just how we're going to butcher this one up. But this is a good piece of meat. So we set it aside on the good stuff. Now I'm going to take the rest of the time and clean this side up just like I did previously for the grind. Cutting and trimming as much of the meat off as I can. And this is how you do the rib section. You get your tenderloin and your back strap and your rib meat. So we're going to clean the rest of this up, and we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, we got this, here's our meat grind. This is all the stuff that was inside of the ribs and on the outside of the ribs. This other side, these ribs over here are pretty much so mangled up that there's not going to be a whole lot of usable stuff on there. We'll get what we can, rinse it off and try to soak it out, but if not, this stuff that's real bloody like this will probably just be ground up into dog and cat food for the time being, but I don't think there's going to be a whole lot. We did get the back strap off of this side. You can see there's big blood chunks, but so pretty much this is what you want the entire rib cage and the entire midsection to look like. This is a whole midsection of the deer, back legs, front legs, or for you old salty dogs out there, fore and aft. Okay, anyway. So this is what you want the whole thing to look like. If it wasn't all mangled up, it would look just like this. So now we're going to move on to the actual quarters of the animal. So we're going to take those inside, and that way we can work at it at the table on there. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with the front quarters. While it's still hanging out here, I'll go ahead and trim off anything that's actually, it looks nasty. and the fat and take off some of the hair. But this is what we're going to take on the inside, and we'll see you when we get in there. Alrighty, we have moved inside. I brought 2 quarters in with me because I do the quarters the same way for each of them. This is a front quarter and this is a hind quarter. Now what I'm going to do, and like I say, I'm not a professional meat processor dude or anything, this is just what I do. You can see all this tissue to where these muscle groups meet and stuff, and there's a bone that runs down, the leg bone, that runs right down to the knee and inside. And all this stuff here, when we cut it off, we're going to put it in the sink and wash it and soak it real good to get some of this extra hair off of here. Because there's a lot of hair on it, but it is what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run my knife right through the calf, right through here, right to this knee, and then follow this leg bone, just like that, right down to the shoulder blade, like so. Try to remove it in one big piece so that we can cut some roasts and some steaks out of it. You know, and if you mess up, which I mess up a lot, just add it into your grind pile. Ground meat is ground meat. And I'll show you one little trick that I do have as far as grinding meat goes here in a second when we get to that point. But for now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this leg bone all the way around and try to get as much of this off as I can. Some of it will be used for grind because the front legs, there's not a whole lot on them, and what is on them a lot of times is really, really tough. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just following the leg bone around with my knife and pulling that meat off as we go around like this. There's going to be a lot of tendons and stuff in your way, but you know, it happens. Just like that. This up here is a shoulder blade, so we'll start back here against the shoulder blade, run my knife right down along the blade to the joint, and start trying to get that off of there too. Everybody has their own different ways to do things. My way is not necessarily the right way. It's just my way. Just keep following that around. Yeah, I still have the hoof on here too. That way we'll use the whole thing. It's ready to come off. Follow the bone up, cut those tendons. Follow the bone all the way down. And there's going to be the first little part of the forearm meat, which is going to have lots of tendons in it, and it's pretty tough. So usually this just goes into the grind for ground meat. And we'll do the same. I will take the sauce coming off here. Do the same thing here on this other side. Take all this other piece off the front. You can start following that shoulder blade and those other leg bones all the way around, and taking that meat off. Big old tendon right there. Try to cut a lot of that around, a lot of that. I hope I'm not boring the crap out of you guys, but I like to be slow and take my time and do the best that I can. if it's not something that you do every day, then you know, you're usually not in practice, so to speak. And usually too, you can see like right here where this other bone is, the top and the bottom of the shoulder blade. You can just take your knives and just follow that and do your separating right there along that bone. Just let your knife run right along them. Now that there is going to be a pretty decent cut of meat, and we'll probably cut this into, cut it this way, flatten it out, and make a little steak out of it. Just like this. Just take my knife, run it right down. Like that. Butterfly it out a little bit. Spread it out wide, and well, it didn't really work out the way I wanted to. Come on now. Like that, and make a steak out of it. Like that. So set this aside. Finish the other side just the same way we did this one. Just follow your knife, let your knife run down to the bone, and follow it all the way around. And there you have it. Like I said, this is the meat off the front quarter. Most of it's going to be grind. Some of it is going to be tender enough where we can make a little roast out of it or cut it into steaks. But there's not a whole lot on here, but everything helps. And that's how I do my front quarters. Now the hind quarters are the same idea. You can see where all your muscle groups are. You can see where your bones run. Trim some of this nasty off of here. Definitely don't want that in there. But I'm going to do it pretty much the same way that I did the front quarter. Start on the inside, follow the leg bone all the way up to the knee. Find the bone in there. There it is. I'm just going to run my knife right along the bone all the way up to the top. Like I say, a lot of this nasty stuff needs to come out of here. Trimming it off. Remember, this was a roadkill deer, so it was pretty mangled on that one side. And I guarantee there's going to be people, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You should have started the other way. Well, each his own, you know. I do what I do. And once you find your leg bone on the inside, just like we did on the front corner, I just let my knife run right down the leg bone. Keep my knife up against the bone. Follow it all the way down till it stops. Here's your ball joint for your hip joint right here. So I'm going to get this little piece of bone out of here. And the phone rings. So I guess we'll take a break and we'll resume this here after I figure out what's going on with the phone. We'll be right back. Alrighty, we're back. It was my good buddy, Mr. Moving On Greg, calling to say hello. So anyway, where were we at? Alright, we're just taking our knife and following it around the bone. Taking this off of the bone. And like I keep saying, I'm sure there's going to be meat processor dudes out there like, you're doing it wrong, that's stupid, man. But you know what, dude? This is how I do it. So, keep running my knife right around the bone. Eventually this leg bone here will pop right off and you have a big old nice chunk of meat. Just like that. And you just let your knife do the work. Let your knife do the work. Always helps to have a sharp knife. Just let it run around the leg bone, and I'll pull that meat off of there. Any of these little chunks that we miss on the bone, we'll go back and clean it off and probably just throw it into the grind pile. And there we have it. That little kneecap part, bring it out. And there you go. Your leg bone comes off. Got a nice clean leg bone. You can finish picking off the little stuff that's off there. And you have your big hind quarter chunk of meat that we'll go through, and like there's some little bone fragments, and there's some of this bloody stuff right here that's still on here. Now a lot of people, you can follow these little sections like right through here. You can see where the muscles connect. Follow those sections out and cut them into smaller, more workable pieces. Just follow that right along where they connect. And then oftentimes what I will do is, once I get it all cleaned up, clean up all the stuff that's not going to be on there, that you don't want on the end, the bloody spots. Like this here, we're going to take this little section here right off. Put it into the animal feed. But all the muscles are connected with their little connective tissues. Turn around here so you can see what I'm doing. You can just separate all those muscles out. A lot of times you just take your fingers and run them right in between the muscle sections and do it that way too. This dry skin is from where we let it hang, which is okay. You can soak it in water and loosen it back up, or use it as sinew. If you're into using the sinew for bow making and stuff like that, then you know, that stuff works pretty good for that. And once you have your a clean chunk that you want to keep like this, then what I will do is I will just take it and you just start cutting your steaks right out of these bigger chunks. Like that. Like that. We'll do that to all these big muscle groups here in the back. We'll start cutting our steaks out of them. And once we get done with that, then we'll show you a little trick that we do for the grind up stuff, and we'll get right back with you. So, here you go. Okay guys, lastly, here's all the scraps, cuttings that we have from like the rib sections and different scrap meat chunks that we have. We're going to grind these into burger, and the only secret that I have is throughout the course of the year, a lot of times we can go to Sam's Club or a butcher shop or whatever, and you can get a whole sirloin for like $38 or $40 sometimes. You can get a whole chunk of sirloin, and we bring it home and we trim it out and cut our own steaks out of it. But in the process of doing that, you get these big chunks of fat that sometimes we will make soot out of them, soot blocks, give them to the chickens so the chickens can get protein, or give some to the dogs. But we'll freeze some of them. That way when we grind deer meat, because deer meat is really, really lean, it doesn't have any fat on it. So as we're grinding up our burger, we'll grind into some fat in with the deer meat. That'll give it a little bit of a fat content, and it's really easy to do. And I'll run all my meat through the grinder twice. That way it's mixed up good and it's ground up good. And then we just put it in zip top storage freezer bags and put it in the freezer. Some of it will get canned, and some of it will be made into jerky and so on and so forth. But those are later videos. For now, this is just one of those little cheap meat grinders from Harbor Freight. I have never had any trouble with it. I think I only paid like $39 for it at Harbor Freight, and I have not had any issues. I've been using it for a couple of years, and it does the business. So it's going to get loud. We're going to turn it on, and we're going to start grinding. Grind a little bit of meat and then a little bit of the fat in with it. So here's how I do it. So there you have it. This is what you'll end up with. And like I said, we'll run it through the grinder again to make sure that it's all mixed in and ground together good. That way your deer meat has some fat content into it. And this may be a little much, and I don't have a ratio for how much fat to put in with how much meat. I don't get that scientifical about it. I just do it till it looks right. This has got, right now it's got too much fat in it, so I'll add a little bit more meat to it. And we'll get it to the right consistency. But there you go. That's how we process the main part of the deer. And like I say, when we make jerky and when we can and stuff like that, we'll do other videos. But I treat deer just like I treat beef, any other red meat. That's how I handle it. And it's good stuff, and it's free meat. Don't know the name of all the cuts. Didn't do a very pretty job of butchering. It's not pretty, but it's meat. So I'm not a professional meat dude. I'm just a dude. So there you go. If I can do it, you can do it. Yours may even look better than mine. Give it a shot. You never know till you try. So that's going to end this little butchering series on how we take apart our deer and get them into workable, manageable chunks and steaks and stuff like that. So thanks for watching. Hope this helps. God bless. In the end. Okay, not the end. Let me show you what we ended up with here. This here is, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 packs of deer steaks that we cut just out of the big chunks of meat from the back end and from the back strap. This here is just other big chunks of meat that we haven't done anything yet with. What we're going to do with this is we're going to make jerky and canning meat out of here. This is what we'll use this here for. These are already been in the freezer overnight, so they're frozen, but I wanted to show you what we ended up with. And then we ended up with 8 of these quart bags, but probably 1.5 pounds or so in each one of ground burger that we will use for chili, burgers, meatloaf, put it in spaghetti sauces. Anything that you would use beef for, we would use this for. This is, I treat it no differently than beef. Like when we're canning it, you know, we can it at 90 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure. So there's videos on my channel about canning meat, no different than any other meat. This is no different than any other meat. So there you go, y'all. I would say we probably ended up with close to 40 pounds or so of usable meat, which isn't a bad thing for, you know, a deer that we hit with the truck. It didn't do any damage, so it's pretty much free meat. And I'm happy and content, and we're going to get this put away and stored in the freezer for now. And when we do jerky and chili and all that kind of stuff, maybe we'll make a video. But I don't know. We'll see. Don't give me a bunch of crap about it. All right, y'all. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. God bless. The end. Buzz, buzz. The end.